So if you are familiar with my channel, you know that I'm not very fond of the Disney live-action remakes, except for, like, Pete's Dragon, which apparently some hardcore fans of the original Pete's Dragon, like all two of them, don't like it. But besides that, I haven't really liked any of them, even the ones that had sort of a good reception, like The Jungle Book. Mainly because their existence, without the context of the original films, doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you take away that context of those original films and look at them as their own thing, they don't work that well. There have been many adaptations of different fairy tales and legends that haven't been Disney, with things like The Jungle Book, Cinderella, and Beauty and the Beast have all had multiple adaptations. But these adaptations are specifically for the Disney movies. So it's really hard to separate the original from the remake. And even when you manage to do that, the films on their own are not that impressive. And that is especially the case with Mulan. I've avoided talking about Mulan for a while because I haven't really talked about many live-action movies in a while on my channel. But that's not the only reason, it's also because it has been covered in many different controversies. So many, there's a dedicated section on the wiki page for this movie. I don't even know if the other live-action remakes have a dedicated controversy section. But I'm not going to talk about that because they've been talked about to death by other people who have talked about this movie. I just want to talk about my thoughts about the movie because I finally watched it after all this time. The movie pretty much goes through the same story beats as the original Mulan, just without a few things like songs or Mushu or some other characters. And I think some of this movie is Disney trying to make up for some of the controversy with the original Mulan back in the 90s, which is a trend with these remakes where they try to fix things that were in the original. Though with this one, it's sort of more understandable because of the things that happened in the 90s. But the movie overall, what I think of it, it's very bland and boring. Some of the problems I have with it is the editing, which is really weird. Because in the beginning, there are some very, very quick cuts where it's like cut, 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 cut. Even during quiet scenes where like Mulan is talking to her father, it's just like cut, 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 and you just don't have any time to breathe. Now, editing like that is understandable for like action scenes and stuff where you're trying to keep up with the action, but during a quiet scene like that, it doesn't make any sense. And as far as what I said in reference to these movies needing the context of the original, they do some weird things where they'll reference songs in the original just by talking a line from one of the songs, or there'll be a musical cue in the background score. And I think a problem with that is that, oh yeah, look at that, isn't that cute? Though, for me, it just reminds me, oh yeah, the original movie was so much more fun than this. This movie tries to be a lot more serious than the other live-action remakes, and it tries to do jokes sometimes, but they fall flat, like, really hard. There's also this narrator that you hear in the beginning and the end, and then one random time in the middle. And it was very jarring to hear that, because I'm like, wait, which character is talking? But it's the narrator, even though you haven't heard him for like an hour. Speaking of things just showing up, in place of Mushu the Guardian that was in the original Mulan, we have a phoenix that shows up and then doesn't show up again for another hour. There's also this villain that's a witch, and it's really hard to get a read on what she wants or what her motives are. There are some scenes that I think look pretty cool in action, but really it's just a lesser version of other Chinese martial arts movies out there. When you take away the context of the original Mulan from the 90s, this just ends up as a lackluster, boring martial arts movie that just doesn't really compare to other great martial arts movies. And the funny thing is, I think this is on the higher end of the live-action remakes. It's mainly just boring and bland and sometimes badly edited. That doesn't mean I don't feel bad for not watching it immediately because of all the controversies. I'm glad I waited as long as I did because it's really nothing special. But if you've seen it, tell me down in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye.